Very good morning, though, to Dan Hodges. Dan, nice to see you. How are you doing?
Morning. Yeah, good.
I don't know whether you witnessed my encounter with my Lord Carlisle. He was a very interesting character. Last September, he said that he thought there should be more information being put out there in the public domain. He is, of course, a former Prevent strategy reviewer. He was removed from that, apparently, in 2019 because he was thought not to be independent enough. He now seems to have changed his tune. He now says Keir Starmer was completely right. So we had a bit of a disagreement, and there we are. And I know you think that Keir Starmer was right to say what he said, but I think he's being slightly economical with the truth, because you know, and I do, certainly in my career as a journalist, there's a big difference, and even Lord Carlisle admitted this, between being arrested and being charged. When you're charged, absolutely, the curtains come down, sub judice, you can't talk about a court case. But when there isn't a court case and somebody's been arrested, you can.
Yes, but the point is, what I'm also aware of is, and I'm sure you're aware as well, you know, obviously we were involved in this case very closely as journalists. It's something I was looking at very closely. And I know, as I'm sure you do, that there was a lot of information about the case that we would like to have published, that we were advised, and this was independent legal advice, this wasn't government lawyers, we were advised that we couldn't because it could potentially prejudice the trial. And I mean, you know...
Yeah, but I think that advice is wrong. This is what I'm saying.
Well, Mike, you may think that, and some people do. But you have to look at this from the perspective of Keir Starmer. As you've said, you're going to get people on the programme, I'm sure eminent lawyers, saying, no, it would have been safe to publish the information. You've just, as you've said, you had Lord Carlisle on, I don't know whether he's changed his position, but is saying, no, that could have potentially prejudiced the trial. There were a lot of lawyers out. There was a big debate about this yesterday on both sides. So you're Keir Starmer. You've got one of the worst atrocities in this country's history. You have some lawyers saying, Prime Minister, don't worry, you can publish the information. It won't prejudice the trial. You then have another group of lawyers saying, no, Prime Minister, if you do, it potentially could. But here's the kicker. Here's the crucial thing. And the head of the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, who were responsible for prosecuting this guy, they very publicly said yesterday, yes, they advised the government and the police not to publish this information because it could, in their view, potentially prejudice the trial. And the police confirmed this. The government has confirmed this. Now, if you're Keir Starmer, this guy has just killed these 3 little girls, and you have 0.5% of doubt about whether or not, if you publish that information, this guy could walk. What are you going to do? You're not going to publish the information.
Yeah, but you see, here's where the problem comes. But here's where the problem comes, Dan, because, you know, what we've got now is a government and a Prime Minister who's more concerned, seemingly yesterday, about clamping down on the internet than he is about what the public actually feels about what he's done, and the fact that he's withheld information that he's admitted to withholding when he didn't have to withhold it. You know, I think the problem we're facing here, Dan, is that there is a creeping kind of sense, and I believe that this comes from the legal fraternity overall. They would rather not give any information out to journalists. They don't like journalists. They don't like people reporting on things that they don't want them to report on. Yeah, our job, right, is to question them. Our job, as I've just done with Alex Carlisle, is to say, no, mate, you're not right. You cannot stop free speech. You cannot stop me from saying this. This will not prejudice the trial, and you can't shut everybody down by pretending to make out that you might.
Yeah, but the point is, fine, then let's change the law. Then let's change.
We don't need to. Where was Keir Starmer's concern about breaking a trial and possibly giving away information that would ruin the prosecution of the far-right rioters, who he declared all to be far-right?
No, I'm sorry.
Before they were even put up in court.
But Mike, this is a completely different situation. Keir Starmer wasn't Prime Minister when he was saying that. Keir Starmer was Prime Minister in this instance.
He was Prime Minister when he was calling the riots. Yeah, hang on, the riots happened when he was Prime Minister. What are you talking about?
Mike. No, that one. I thought you were talking about the one before. But Keir Starmer was not talking about specific individuals in relation to specific...
He was referring to them all as far-right thugs before the trial. Yes, he was.
Mike, come on. He was talking generally about the mass disorder we were seeing on the streets. He wasn't saying, here is defendant X, and he is responsible for Y. Now, this is what we're talking about in relation to the Southport killings. Now, I've just given you the scenario that Keir Starmer was presented with. He was presented with a scenario where the head of the CPS said to him, if you publish this information, you could prejudice the trial.
That doesn't make him right, though.
Keir Starmer, sorry?
That doesn't make him right, though, does it?
What do you mean it doesn't make it right?
It doesn't make him right.
That's the head of the CPS.
No. Yeah, but the
right?
CPS
They're
has got
the people
the CPS.
Who have
Come on.
to make the judgment.
Yes, I get that. But Dan, hang on. If you swallowed the Kool-Aid, remember what side of the fence you're on. You're on the side of journalism, right? The reason that we go after government officials and people who lead the CPS and ask them questions like, why didn't you bring any charges against Mohammed Al-Fayed? Why didn't you bring any charges against Jimmy Savile? Because they don't always get it right, and they need to be held to account.
Absolutely right. I am on the side of journalism,
right,
and I will be able to publish as much as I can.
Yeah.
But I'm also on the side of justice. I'm also on the side of due process. And I'm also on the side of making sure that psychopaths who go around and murder 3 little girls don't have the slightest prospect of walking free.
There was no prospect of him walking free. But this is why we all have lawyers, right? There's lawyers at the Mail on Sunday. We have lawyers here because we challenge quite often in the courts because we are told we can't reveal certain things, and then we go and get a court order lifted because the law is a movable feast. It is not set in stone.
Right, Mike. Right. So on Southport, what did your lawyers tell you could say on air?
Our lawyers told us that when there is an arrest, a case is not active in the same way that it is. Mike. Hang on, in the same way that it is once the charge has been brought. We didn't have the information to report it. If I'd had the information to report, I would have gone to our lawyers and I would have very strenuously argued that I could reveal that information. And they might have told me, advised me against it. But I would have been pushing to do it. But I didn't have the information. Yeah, and guess why? Absolutely. Because it was being sat on. Because it was being sat on by the Prime Minister and the CPS.
It wasn't, Mike. It wasn't. You just literally said, what happens in this instance is you go to your lawyers. Your lawyers give you advice about whether you should or shouldn't say certain things in the public domain.
Yes.
That's exactly what Keir Starmer did.
No.
He went to the government's lawyers and said, what can we put in the public domain? Well, Mike, you're saying no. That is literally what happened.
But he didn't. Yeah, but the reason he did it is not being revealed, and that's where I'm saying he's been economical with the truth, because he didn't say.
The reason he did.
No,
we know the reason he did it.
No, come on. We know why he didn't want to reveal it, because he thought that it would be a problem for public order. He was worried that if he suddenly came out and said that this was a terror charge, that there would be an adverse reaction, right? When Joe Cox was murdered, how long did it take for the police and the CPS to reveal that the terrorist who killed her was a terrorist? How long do you think it took?
I have no idea when
it was 24 hours, right? So before the trial, hang on, before the trial of Joe Cox's murderer, he was called a terrorist by the authorities, okay?
Because the police prosecuted the crime and prosecuted him and prosecuted it as a terror attack. It was led by the investigation was led by the anti-terror police.
What's the difference?
This is another mad part.
This was investigated. This was also investigated by the terror police, right? The reason they found the ricin, and the reason they found the Al Qaeda manual, because they went to his house as the terror police, treating him as a terrorist, arresting him as a terrorist. Right. They didn't charge him with a terror offence. And my question to you is, why not?
Mike, if we're going to talk about this, we have to talk about the facts.
I'm talking about the facts.
Has not been prosecuted for the murders under terror offences.
Yes.
The police.
But that's wrong, isn't it? That's wrong. Even Keir Starmer said that yesterday. He's now saying he's a terrorist.
Mike, I don't actually think it is wrong, but whether Keir, relevant.
What do you think Keir Starmer said yesterday? Did he say he was a terrorist or not?
No.
Yes, he did.
He didn't say
he
was a terrorist.
Well, look, he's written a piece in the Sun today. In the Sun today, right? He has said terrorism has changed. We must guard against loners and misfits who threaten us, and I will root them out. He's saying he's a terrorist. Right?
Absolutely.
So he's saying he's a terrorist, right? Can we get that out of the way?
No, Mike. Listen again, right? You may have your view about whether he's a terrorist. Keir Starmer may have his view of a terrorist. I may have a view of as a terrorist. In the run-up to the trial, that is not relevant. There is a legal definition of terror.
Yes.
The police,
which is also wrong.
The police and the prosecutors took the judgment. He was not a terrorist.
Yes, and that's
now, you
wrong.
may disagree
and,
with
well, no,
that.
Keir Starmer wants to change the law, doesn't he? So he disagrees with it.
Fine.
Right.
Fine.
And you've also said the key words. You've also said the key words leading up to the trial. Okay. Now, before the individual is charged, there is no trial. So between arrest and charge, that's not leading up to a trial because there isn't one.
Mike, what was the window between the guy being arrested and the guy being charged?
It was quite some time before they admitted what his name was, right? Because there was a court order. Hang on. I'm giving you
the window?
I'm giving you the history of the whole thing, right? He was arrested.
But what was the window?
He was arrested at the scene, right? He was obviously not going to be a problem to prove his guilt or innocence because he was arrested at the scene. He didn't, they didn't have to prove that he was there. He was there. They arrested him at the scene. He then, because he was 17 years old, had the right to keep his name out of the public domain. But a court order was made by, I believe, the police to actually reveal his name because there was some speculation about whether or not he might be a small boat refugee, a migrant who had come here. All of that
wasn't
stuff.
Covered up,
No, that wasn't covered up. But the point is that they released his name, but nothing else. And so there was no reason for them not to.
Mike, I'm sorry, you're not answering the question.
Well, I don't remember exactly what the length of time was, but it was probably a couple of weeks.
The reality is,
it was probably a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks. I don't think it was a couple of weeks. He was charged with the murders.
It wasn't immediate, is what I'm saying. It wasn't immediate.
The point, Mike, come on, let me finish. He was charged with the murders in relatively short order.
Yes, now, but it certainly wasn't the same day, though.
Mike, on the same day, they had not found the supposed Al-Qaeda manual.
No.
On the same day, they had not confirmed the material at the house was ricin. The material had to be sent off to put them down the laboratory to be properly processed.
Okay.
The manual was not found until later when they actually went through his computers, his hard drives, all his material. That information was not available until he had been charged with the murders.
Yes, okay, I get all that, right? But the point is...
I'm sorry, but you were saying completely the opposite.
Well, no, I wasn't, actually.
You were. You were saying...
No, they found the stuff...
there was no crime.
They found the stuff...
There was no pending... Mike,
they found the stuff...
No,
they found the stuff before... No, I will do. They found... Look, listen, we can argue about the timing, right? We knew the police were searching his home. We knew the police had found what was called incriminating evidence at his home. We were told about that, right? Also, there's a duty of care that needs to be considered here, and people have said this at the time as well. If this guy's producing ricin in his house, surely the people who live near that property need to know that that was what he was doing. So there's also that aspect of information which is useful, which again many people have argued on my side should have been released. People should have been told that this is what he was up to.
Mike, again, that is a matter for the police in consultation with the Crown.
Well, the police are saying that they were told not to say anything by the CPS, which is not the case in every other case.
The CPS said if you release this information, so there was a balance there. But the point is, it comes back to the fundamental issue. If the Crown Prosecution Service say, do not release this information, because if you do, it runs a risk of prejudicing the trial, you are literally saying you think the Prime Minister of the country should ignore that and put the information out anyway.
I'm saying that what should happen is that questions should be asked about the motivation as to why that instruction is being given out. And what we do know about the two-tier system we have of justice in this country is that things happen in a very different way. Look at what happened in Manchester, at Manchester Airport. We can't talk about that. Guess why? Because now there's a charge. So I don't want to get into that. But for a long time, there was no charge. And there was lots being said about the circumstances surrounding that particular case between the arrest and the charge, right? So you can't have it both ways. The CPS didn't say anything. Hang on. The CPS didn't say anything about that. They didn't make any recommendation. All they kept saying was, we're considering what to do, right? And for months and months on end, nothing happened. So the idea that you can now argue that in some cases you have to say nothing and in other cases you don't means that the system isn't working, does it?
But Mike, you just contradicted yourself.
No, I haven't.
Can't have it both ways. We're not having it both ways.
You are.
You've literally just said you and I cannot discuss the Manchester Airport case because it could potentially prejudice the trial.
Yes. But no, that's but we know. No, it's not, because we know much more about the two assailants in that case than we did about this guy. That's my point. But I'm being told we haven't got time for this, so I'm going to have to. We're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. I mean, in some ways, I feel slightly warm and fuzzy, Dan, because we've been getting on far too well lately. So it's about time we disagreed about something.
The natural order has been restored.
Yeah, thank God. Anyway, good to talk to you. Thank you.